Just got to figure out the microphone. I'd like to welcome Steve Shelton. He's the CEO of Green Shoe Consulting. He'll be presenting your last session today. So, welcome, Steve.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for that lovely, warm introduction. So, few things before we get started. I want to make sure everybody's in the right room. This is for stress and burnout, right? Fair enough. Bill's already getting into Zen mode. Appreciate it. So, one, this is also the first time that I'm presenting at a cybersecurity conference in my hometown. I'm super stoked and excited, so I need to manage my excitement a little bit, but we're going to jump into this. And so I'm going to talk about, one, I've got 45 minutes. I talk a lot and can talk for a very long time. So I run workshops that can go from 2 hours to 2 days, and neither one of which is an issue for me to talk because I love talking. So we're going to cover very quickly in this amount of time the science behind stress and how it manifests into burnout, what burnout actually is, the symptoms specifically so you all can identify those symptoms in yourself, in others, with the hopes of we can take better care of ourselves and the others that we work with. Then we're going to get into 2 real-time stress management techniques and then talk about what you can do from here because there is a lot behind all of this stuff and we are not going to solve stress and burnout within 45 minutes. So I apologize if you're looking forward to that. Not going to happen. I'm very good, but not that good. So we'll get started. I never thought I was going to show this picture in this area ever again. I graduated my undergrad degree from St. Ambrose University, played football for them as well. But I show this not because I want to brag about how awesome I looked 25 years ago. I want to show this because of the fact this is part of the journey that got me to where I am today. And so playing football, I played football for Moline High School, and the coaches, they were very big on character development, life skills. There's more to life than sport. They were teaching us on how to be good leaders, good teammates. Leaders lift others up. No one is above or below you, and vice versa. And the idea that we are stewards of the school, the team, the school, and the community, and stewards leave things better than when they found them. I come from a farming and military family, very values-based. All of that messaging aligned with who I am and what I stand for, and that's been a constant theme throughout my life. I then went to college thinking that everybody's sport experience was like mine in high school and found out very quickly it was not. It was very focused on perform or get out of the way. I don't care what's going on with you mentally and emotionally. If you can't do the job, we've got a whole bunch of people that can fill in for you, right? And so I was left kind of shocked as like, what is up with this environment? Because I just left a really awesome, supportive, empowering environment where everybody bought in, excuse me, and we accomplished more than we probably should have based on the talent that we had on the team. However, my college experience was a lot more like my corporate experience. So I worked for a lot of big companies. I sold for Symantec, RSA, Proofpoint. I was at Oracle for a year and left pretty quickly because it was the most dysfunctional environment I've ever been in. Sorry if you're at Oracle right now. But 90% of my experience in corporate America was like my college football experience. Perform or get out of the way. Moving from that, sorry, what is going on? I then had a daughter. My daughter went into elementary school at a Montessori. Her Montessori teacher was also a licensed therapist that was focused on teaching social emotional learning skills. It's all character development, life skills, that type of thing. The way that her teacher was teaching it was so simplified, it was kind of like the sky is blue, right? And I was like, well, everyone knows the sky is blue. I don't think it's going to create the change in behavior that you're saying it's going to create. And a couple months later, I walked into the classroom to see my 9-year-old daughter with another 9-year-old classmate doing conflict resolution effectively with no adult intervention. My jaw dropped, and I bought in from that moment. It's like, that is the most profound thing I've ever seen in my life. It gave me skills as a parent to communicate with my child, to diffuse issues, to relate, to connect, and do all the things that really allow humans to thrive and relationships to thrive. So I've gotten certified with some SEL components in terms of facilitating. And then, anybody seen the movie Men Who Stare at Goats? Got a few. I love it. So the movie, if you haven't seen it, which most of you have not, and I'm not shocked, was in the movie theaters for like 10 seconds, and then before streaming was huge, got pushed to streaming services really quick. That was like, you're not a great movie if that happens. But the idea was this story was based on a true story where the US military after Vietnam felt like they had lost their souls, so they wanted to avoid the Vietnam type of conflict, so they created this peacekeeping group of warrior monks or Jedis. So for somebody that grew up with Star Wars and wanted to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, I was like, I've never heard this story. What is this all about? You can buy the operating manual for the 1st Earth Battalion on Amazon for like 20 bucks. Most of it's mind, body, spirit development stuff. It's pretty cool, but then it gets into developing your telepathic skills and all these other things like using the Force, which you can do. It's a whole other thing we'll get into later. But this idea that there was what's presented as the most destructive, warmongering group created this peace-loving warrior monk. They can kill you with your pinkies, but they love themselves, they love people, they love the planet, and they're here to protect everybody. Never heard that story, right? That group ended up, I got connected with them. George Clooney's character, the character George Clooney was modeled after, I got connected with him. He became my teacher. Really weird story. That actually set me on the path to what I'm doing today. I experienced my own stress and burnout thanks to my Tommy Boy picture there. So I left corporate America several years ago to do something more in line with who I am and what my mission is. I want to help others and make the world a better place. So the Green Bay Packers, I'm a huge Packers fan. The sports psychologist for the Green Bay Packers, actually, I tried to say, I'm going to use my social emotional learning skills to try to help people better understand how to manage their own mental and emotional states. I got connected to the Packers sports psychologist and tried to convince him to just let me pay him monthly to be my advisor so that I can teach people how to do this stuff. And he's like, nope, not going to do that. You're going to cause harm and you're not that smart. So I decided to go to grad school and get my master's in human and performance psychology from Adler University. And then I was planning on working strictly with sports athletes, and then the Chief Information Security Officer for Northern Trust posted on LinkedIn a few years ago about how much stress and burnout there is in the industry and how much he believes in coaching. And so he actually had a webinar with a sports psychologist to talk about that, and that's what spurred me moving into this space. So I created Green Shoe Consulting as a means to conduct research on stress and burnout in cybersecurity because there was none when I started. There really isn't much now. We're bringing to market resources like performance psychologists, licensed therapists, organizational psychologists, and human factor engineers to help focus on the organizational issues. So I'm going to talk about the science behind the stress, the burnout, and all that. I just wanted to give you an idea of how I got here and why I'm here. So, with that, the biggest issue that we face with stress and burnout in cybersecurity and IT in our workforces is engagement. According to a recent poll by Gallup, for roughly every 2 engaged employees, we have 1 disengaged employee. So 1/3 of our US workforce is disengaged. Disengaged employees hate their job, hate their bosses, they're not super fun to be around. The challenge with that is that it lowers morale, lowers productivity, and negatively impacts profits. Add into the fact the state of the economy, the current election coming up, the fact that companies have been laying off in droves over the past year and a half or so. It's still ongoing, and depending on who you talk to, next year is not going to be super fun. So the challenge for us is to understand what leads to engagement and how do we help improve and take those 33% of the workforce to help them get engaged. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, lots of not great stats. So I imagine since most of you are here, you're either experiencing high stress, possibly burnout, or you're seeing environments and people that are dealing with this. So I love to compare being a football guy, the football analogy with IT and cybersecurity. The standard NFL tenure for a football player is 3 years. They get the crap beaten out of them physically. They make a lot of money doing it. The standard CISO has less than a 2-year tenure in their jobs. I don't know anybody that goes into an industry or a job thinking, I want to stay in this job just for 2 years. That's awesome. Let me change again and again and again, right? So this idea that, one, it's not a long tenure. Two, it takes a lot of money to replace an employee, especially a CISO. The average rate is 30 to 40% of the salary to recruit, train up, onboard, get somebody else in place. Excuse me. And the challenge with this is that the rates of stress and burnout are extremely high. So Heidrick and Struggles was putting out a report over the past several years. I haven't seen it come out this year, but it was the Global CISO Survey. Last year, the stats had increased somewhere around, I think it was 71% of those CISOs that they said were concerned about significant stress on their personal health. 59% were worried about burnout. If you take those numbers and think about the rates of COVID infected and the deaths out of COVID, if you put that rate at 59% of people dying from COVID during lockdown and all that stuff that was going on, that is beyond crisis. I say that because these stats are crisis numbers. There's a major issue in the industry, and there's something going on right now where people are saying that they've had enough. They've had enough of being miserable, of being kicked around, mistreated, and not being treated as human. So the idea here is that we really want to start to get into understand what's leading to this and what do we do about it. So to set the stage, I'm also a former musician, like to use my music capabilities, but one of the things that I see a lot of is, and we'll get into this too, is that one of the challenges we all face is communication. Part of that is a lot of us go through life assuming just because we use the same words doesn't mean we have the same understanding of what that word means to each other. We have different experiences, different backgrounds, different perspectives of the world. So in order to communicate effectively, we have to understand what we mean by the words we use, which requires listening, asking questions to clarify, that type of thing. In this situation, we're gonna just start with the definitions. Stress, then, being a state of worry or mental tension caused by a difficult situation. Stress is a natural human response that prompts us to address challenges and threats in our lives. That's an important sentence because of the fact the way that we perceive any task, any situation that we're in, if we perceive something as a threat, that's a much different perspective than a challenge. A threat means it's something that can cause us harm. We don't have the resources to deal with that thing. I'll get into how our brains work because this fits for that. A challenge then is something that if we don't have the resources in the moment, we can skill up, we can pull in help, we can at some point in time overcome that challenge. Different mindset. Secondly, stress is your response. This will make sense in a second. I just want to hit on that because it'll stick in your head. Stressors can be received and interpreted in our minds, cognitively, in our bodies, somatically. Burnout, then, is a response to chronic stressors in this situation in the workplace, but you can and you do experience stressors in your personal lives and a variety of other areas outside of work. We're just going to focus on work on this session, but they're a response to stressors that haven't been managed effectively. So with that said, I'm going to ask just for 3, what things stress you out in your job? What do you mean? How do users stress you out? Complaining. You don't do your job good enough. Stop doing stuff that makes me slow down my job. What else? Not getting support from upper management. Miscommunication. The first workshop I gave to a major bank on stress management, I started with this. I didn't realize that it was going to open up such a can of worms. We spent 2 hours talking about stressors. That's why I put the limit on this. And so jumping forward, dang, all right. I talked about this. I'm only going to point out the fact, one, my organization does research on stress and burnout in cybersecurity. We started last year. This is a free report. You can download it just to be able to understand some of the components that go into this, and then share this with anybody within your organization, any friends, colleagues, etc. I just want to give this away. If you want, please talk to me afterwards and I'll show you this, right? Second, stresses you out. What we found through the research and conversations is, has anybody heard of sacrifice syndrome? A few people. Sacrifice syndrome is pretty much what it sounds like, but the idea is you are giving so much of yourself, you don't take care of yourself, you will sacrifice your own personal health, your personal life, because you need to do the job. And you've got a huge pile of work, and you think, if I spend one more hour, if I work over the weekend, if I don't go to my kids' thing, whatever it is, you're sacrificing your own self, your health, your life outside of work just to try to get that pile of work down. The irony is that pile of work never goes away. So you sacrifice, 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 and still don't get the outcomes and achievements you're looking to do. 2, layoffs, the state of the economy, major issue right now. Anybody been in a company in the past 6 months that have had layoffs? Almost half the room. Being laid off itself sucks. There's a lot of meaning and impact to our own personal lives over that. Being a person who remains at the company and possible fear of not losing your job or losing your job, whatever it is, not knowing the uncertainty leads to a lot of stress as well, right? Communication, already pointed out, on both ways, not being understood or valued by the business. Poor leadership, the number one reason people leave their jobs is because of a shitty manager. Time management, unnecessary meetings. Show of hands, who's ever had a wasted time meeting? Yep. Welcome to corporate America, everybody. Unrealistic expectations. Traditionally, not for everybody anymore, but traditionally, and it still goes on quite a bit, cybersecurity has been held to the expectation to block all the bad stuff, 100%. If you don't, you're fired. So block all the bad stuff. No way to do that. That unrealistic expectation can never be met. Oh my goodness. And so that leads to a lot of frustration, annoyance, irritation, and just unhappiness, right? The last one then is the work-life balance. I have bad news. I don't believe in a 50-50 work-life balance. I think that's baloney. The idea is with any relationship, it's not 50-50. It doesn't stay static. It fluctuates. Brene Brown has a great mindset or strategy for dealing with her husband. She says that if she comes home from a week of travel or he comes home from his job, they check in automatically. What percentage are you at? Are you at 100% energy level? Because I'm at 60. I'm not doing great. I need some help, right? And so if he knows that she's at a 60 and he's at 100%, he's like, I got you. Go chill, take a bath, I'll do dinner, I got the kids, whatever you need, I got you, right? If they're both at 20, holy crap, look out, because it means they're both running low on reserves and all that, so they say, we have an agreement, we have to be extra patient, extra compassionate with each other, and give each other some space, right? Just get through, go to bed, tomorrow's another day. Same thing with work relationships and how you're interacting there, it's not 50-50. There's going to be days, going to be weeks where you have to put in 80 hours because there's been an incident or something. But as long as it's not continuing for a long period of time, there's going to be times where you have to give more, and there's times where you're not going to have to give more. So we have to be mindful of that as well. So, types of stress. As I started out with the definition of stress, there is good stress. Good stress we refer to as eustress. Eustress in the green is stuff that while it takes some work, it could be stressful, feel stressful, the outcomes are actually more beneficial than the actual negatives that you're getting out of it, right? I happened to get married 6 months before COVID. We tried to keep it the most informal, down-to-earth, super simple wedding. It was outdoors. It was a street party. It was still fairly costly, and because it was outside, there was lots of planning, lots of things that could have gone wrong, lots of stress, just like, I hope it goes well. The whole thing went great, but that was a stressful interaction because of all the planning, the variables, blah, blah, blah. There's a variety of these things here. The challenge is when we get into distress. I specifically have these colored specifically because I have an analogy that I'd use to work with folks, which is the stoplight. You pull up to a stoplight, the moment it turns green, you don't think about it, you go, right? You're in control of your performance. The challenge is when we start to have things that take us out of being in control of our performance. The yellow gets into the acute distress, traffic jams where you're trying to get somewhere. I live in Chicago, there is no rhyme or reason anymore to traffic patterns. Drives me crazy. Crowds, loud noises, a big boom would shock and jolt your system, right? That's a stress response. The challenge then is when distress becomes chronic. Chronic stress lasts on average more than 19 days. So what I have listed here is the components of burnout: workload, autonomy, values, community, fairness, reward. I'll go into those more in a second. The last one I want to mention, though, is this is starting to get more awareness thanks to folks like Mental Health Hackers. Their table is out there, by the way. Mental Health Hackers has been doing a job for the past 10 years or so to help educate the community on the need for mental health awareness. Cybersecurity has a lot of neurodivergent folks, ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, etc. But each one of us, life is hard. I don't know anybody that has not experienced some form of trauma, where they admit to it or not. So trauma and the baggage that we carry mentally and emotionally does not just disappear when we go to work. So business leaders, our leaders, we need to understand that this is a thing. We all have stuff that's going on in our lives daily that's happened already, and if it doesn't go addressed, or if it goes unaddressed, it's going to create issues. So how our brains work. This is going to be a very simplified concept because of the timing. But what I believe, and research shows, that our reality is based on our decisions. The idea being, our physiology, our physical state is a part of this, but simply put, our brains are set to scan the environments for any threats to our safety and well-being. 2 million years worth of evolution, right? The majority of that 2 million years worth of time, we did not have electricity or plumbing and all this nice luxury life that we've got going on right now. And so if we're outside in the wilderness trying to survive, hunt, forage for food, a twig snaps, our attention snaps over to that to scan right away. Is that a threat to my safety and well-being? Is that something that's going to kill me, or am I okay? Is that good or bad? Is this the end or the beginning? All those things, right? That snap of the twig, there's a thought, focus goes to that. What is that? Instantly, because of the state of our emotions, we apply meaning. Should I be fearful of that? Should I be angry? Should I be happy? Because it's not something that's going to kill me, right? And then based upon that emotion, we choose a behavior or an action. And there's two things that shape our emotions and decisions. First and foremost, in the moment, is your physical and emotional state. How many people have ever made a decision when you're super, super pissed off? Was it a great outcome? Usually not, right? If you've ever interacted with somebody when you've been really upset, really angry, and somebody tries to come talk to you, it's not like you just go, oh, hey, hi, everything's fine. Everything's great. What can I help you with, right? I don't know about you. I joke about having like 20 different voices in my head. Animal from the Muppets is in the back, normally caged up. He's super fun to be around. When I get angry, though, I feel like the Incredible Hulk. I can feel my arms get big, my knuckles hit the ground, and I'm like, oh no, you're not gonna like me right now, you know? So understanding the state that we're in the moment, and part of that is I teach skills to help manage state. The more that we can manage our state, the more chance we have to be making better decisions. And the other part, if you've ever read Dr. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the perspective of our world. What's the lens that you're looking through to determine the world that you're in? Who are you? Who do you believe you are as a person? What's your identity? What's right and wrong to you? What do you believe other people to be like? Are you cynical and skeptical that other people are just out to get you and they're shitty people? Or are most people good? Those types of things. All of that plays into our decision making, right? Anyone know what this is? Oh, I love it. Again, I come from a farming military family. We don't talk about feelings all that much. I saw my dad cry twice by the time I was 16 years old, once because he put down the family dog. My response, you baby. Jeez. And then I got a dog and I had to put my dog down. I was like, oh my God, my dog. This is the feelings wheel. This I'm putting up here because of the internal primary feelings. Bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad, happy, and surprised. 70% of those feelings are not positive. 70% are negative. That's because our brain is set to scan for any threats to our safety and well-being. So if our brains are set up as default for that, how easy is it for us to go into negative and just go down that rabbit hole of, oh, that person did that stuff on purpose. I know they didn't like me. I knew they did that. They meant to do that, right? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't really help to assume ill will, but the idea is if we're not training the skills to notice when we're going into the negative and being able to pull us back into the positive, that's trouble. The quality of our life is dictated by the quality of our emotions. So, I talk threat and challenge. This is kind of the AI image creator image I have in terms of what it looks like in our brains when the survival instinct kicks in. It's just chaos, right? We're running around. We're old cave person mindset. This is a social emotional learning concept, this flip lid. I like this coming from a family where the men don't talk about feelings all that much. It's a lot of grunting, you know. So this idea of being able to have a visual cue to ask somebody, hey, I can tell something's off. You look like you're angry or mad or sad or something. Where's your lid at? Because what happens is, at rest, at homeostasis, the thumb is our amygdala and hippocampus. That's our long-term memory. The fingers are the prefrontal cortex, which houses all the problem-solving, critical thinking, creativity. At rest, they're connected. When we get really angry, really afraid, really sad, even when we're really happy, the prefrontal cortex lifts off. When it's lifted off into survival instinct, it's fight, flight, or freeze. We don't have access to problem-solving, critical thinking, and creativity. So we default to the negative emotions to survive. Human history and human biology is set just so we survive. These skills require training to evolve past that. It's not easy. It's like exercising. Show of hands, how many people love to exercise? Got about a third of the room. Bingo. Yep. How many of you have brains and voices that say, dude, I don't want to exercise today. I'll do it tomorrow, right? That's what we call the resistor. Carl Jung likes to call it the shadow, the self-sabotaging, self-defeating voice that we all have that says, you don't want to do that. That's going to be painful. It's going to suck. You know, the couch is so much nicer right now. The bed's so much nicer. This ice cream is so much nicer. I love ice cream. Shout out to Whitey's. So this idea that this is how we're defaulted against, right? So how do we move past this? One, what we look at is this is the inverted U hypothesis. This is one of many hypotheses in regards to how stress impacts our ability to perform mentally. The idea is when there is no stress, no need to perform, we're either asleep or dead. Getting morbid. So this idea, once we have a need to perform, stress is going to increase, but for every one of us, we have an ideal zone of functioning. That ideal zone of functioning being different for every one of us is, you could describe it as being in the zone, being in the flow state, but you feel energized, you feel focused, you feel challenged, you feel like you're on top of your game, you're learning, you're growing, all these great things. But the challenge is when we stay in that zone too long, we start to go with diminishing returns onto the other side where we start to get exhausted, fatigued, into burnout. So we need to know when to pump the brakes, how to pump the brakes, to be able to recharge, because just like athletes, if you're training with no recovery, diminishing returns, you're going to have injuries, you're going to have issues that take you out of performing. So what leads to burnout? These 6 areas, based on the existing research, are the primary components. This comes from, there's a great book called The Burnout Challenge. If you've never read it, Dr. Christina Maslach, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and Dr. Michael Leiter put this research together over decades of research. The idea that these 6 areas lead to job fit or job mismatch. So, workload. Do you have the resources to manage the workload that you are dealing with? See, big smile there. I'm sure nobody has dealt with being overwhelmed by your workload, right? This idea, by the way, I just had a conversation with a 51-year-old cybersecurity professional who's fairly high up in his organization. First conversation I have with him, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, I don't really process information all that quickly. He's like, and so a lot of people around me don't really understand, and so I can handle like 2 projects at a time, but I'm constantly getting projects, and so I'm trying to figure it out, but like, even my relationship with my wife, she'll tell me something, and in the moment it'll look like I'm just a deer in headlights, but it'll take me 3 days to really process the information before I can respond. And I'm like, you're 51, have you not had like an assessment to know if that's neurodivergent? Because you sound neurodivergent. And he's like, no, I've never done that. What do you mean? I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like I think I just changed your life in this moment, right? Like, there's a whole stigma behind this thing. And guess what? We're in stigma land right now. I grew up here. My great-grandparents had farms in central Missouri, so I am very familiar with here to Missouri in terms of the landscape, the culture, the environment. This is not an area that's like, hey, will you hold my hand and talk about feelings right now? Right? But guess what? We need to catch up. And it actually empowers us to be able to talk about these things, because the biggest thing, which I'll get into, out of this research in stress and burnout, the biggest thing when employees were asked what would help you feel better and less stressed, the single greatest response was, if I had someone I could talk to privately and confidentially without any repercussion. The biggest thing, just to be able to get the vent out, right? So, control. How much autonomy do you have in your job? Do you have the ability to make decisions and enforce the decisions? Do you have the ability to do your job the way that you see fit? Or do people just tell you, shut up and do it this way? Community. Do you have good, positive support? Do you feel like the people that you work with, not only in your department, but across business lines and other departments, that they have your back, they have your best interest in mind? Are there political components that are in there, Knives Out, etc.? Oracle. Fairness. Do you feel like rules and policies and procedures are administered fairly and equally to everybody across the organization? I see some head shaking. Or do you feel like people get special exemptions, don't play by the rules, etc.? Values. One of my, all these are my favorite, but this is a big one. Do you even know who you are and what you stand for? If I asked every one of you, the common responses are, well, I'm a cybersecurity manager, right? I'm the CISO, I'm a father, I'm a sibling. It's not who you are. The values and the principles, we all have them because we all make decisions every day. What time am I going to wake up? Am I going to shower? What clothes am I going to wear? What am I going to have for breakfast? All these things are based on our values and things that we hold dearly. And it's the stuff, when we know these things, that gets us through the hard times. But furthermore, How many companies have values stated in terms of what they stand for, and how many of them actually follow through on those? Not many. Big challenge. The last one is one of the most simple ones, is reward. This is not financial. This is, do you get recognized for the work that you do, for the value that you contribute? Simply a thank you, right? The mental health hackers have these kindness challenge coins. It's an social emotional learning concept of recognizing somebody's talent. So the kindness challenge coin being, I noticed you did something kind to somebody else. I want to give you this coin to acknowledge the kindness that you showed to somebody else, and I want you to pass that coin along, because now we're focusing on kindness and not negativity, right? So, by the way, before I get into that one, it takes all 6 of these to be in burnout, to be mismatched. I'm coining this term workplace entrapment. It's really cybersecurity entrapment. But the idea of, show of hands, who's seen or heard the term golden handcuffs? For those that have not heard it, the golden handcuffs are the fact that you have to do this job. You cannot leave because you get paid so well, because of the benefits, because there's nothing else out there, whatever reasoning that you have to do this job. You are stuck. You have no choice. The have-tos are stronger and more crippling than the get-tos. I get to do this job because I choose to. I can choose to leave this job anytime because I mean more to this company and this person above me than this person means to these people. It's a much different mindset. So burnout is a combination of how we manage and interpret stress, as well as motivation. Motivation being broken down into the autonomy, control component, competency. Do you feel like you're good at the things that you're required to do for your job? Do you have the skills to do the job? And then do you feel like you actually belong in that environment? There are many reasons why we feel like we do not belong. And it takes such a little amount of effort to change that. So the burnout symptoms get into this. If there's any country music fans, I hope you'll like this. The first one being emotional and physical exhaustion. So we all have those days where we're just spent mentally, physically, you know those things. And the idea being, you don't want to get out of bed in the morning because you just dread the thought of going to work. The negatives outweigh the positives, right? Cynicism being the second. You've got a negative response to the job. There's reduced concern for your performance. I really don't give a F about this, right? And then the last one being professional inefficacy. It doesn't matter what you do, how well you do the work, you feel like it just doesn't matter, no one gives a shit. Excuse my language. I like to cuss. These 3 things, you are in burnout. And it leads to the Johnny Paycheck, take this job and shove it attitude, right? This is disengagement. So the idea is, how do we help turn that around? Is this a you problem? Depends. I would argue, as a psychology professional, every one of us needs to continuously and more so improve our mental skills to manage our mental and emotional states better. However, the bigger challenge is it's really the organization is adding the greater stress on top of us because of the way it's designed. My first few years out of college, I was actually in banking, so I got a behind the curtain view at how banking works. Super scary, not a good time. But the idea that originally I thought corporations were this magical entity separate from human beings for some reason, and then I started working with CFOs and CEOs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are just as dumb as a lot of other people I've known. But the cultures are a mirror to the leadership's personality. And if the leaders are negative, fear-mongering, negative reinforcement, et cetera, that's going to bleed down to the rest of everybody else because everybody else thinks that's what's expected. So, what do you do about it? I love this picture because most of the time when I think about Albert Einstein, it's just a stoic, kind of somber look. But he's clearly being goofy here because the thinking that got us to where we are is not the thinking that's going to get us to where we want to be. So we have to change our thinking. And I love the fact that this is an ultimate task because cybersecurity professionals as a whole are not really trusting. You're built to not be trusting, right? But guess what? I'm gonna make you trust me, like it or not, right? The idea is we need to be able to trust each other if we're gonna do great things. And in order to change, we need to see a different way and be open to a different way. So this idea, I already covered this, just having somebody that provides the space to talk, to vent, to get the stuff off of your shoulders, your mind, super important and impactful. I'm happy to share this slide deck with everybody because the next few slides are really busy. This is research-based, based upon specific burnout criteria. If it's overworking, overtraining, there's a variety of variables. Do you need recovery? Do you have non-work stress? Do you have too much workload? Here's the intervention strategies that would be suggested to deal with. By the way, there are different ones if you are dealing with mental cognitive stress versus somatic stress. There are combination strategies. So the idea here is, where is the stress coming from? Is motivation lacking? There's all these things. So I'm not going to get into all of this because there is a lot. But the idea is, first and foremost, is to generate an awareness. So if you come over to the Mental Health Hackers table, there is a survey you can fill out, 22 questions, pretty simple and easy. Fill it out, you'll get some results shot back to let you know what your stress levels are, if you're in burnout, experiencing it or not. But to check those first is the first step. Secondly, having a personal response plan is very, very helpful to understand what your triggers are, how you respond to certain situations, because fear and anxiety are predictable, therefore we can plan for them. I know, I love this guy. I wish that was me. So I'm gonna go into this first. So this is the first step towards this plan. The idea is knowing who you are when you're at your best versus when you're struggling, when you're stressed, right? So I talked about the stoplight. Green is in control of your performance. Yellow, you're losing control. Red is you need a full stop and reset because the plane has crashed into the side of the mountain, right? Everything's going bad. When you're at your best, what is your body language like? Are you slumped over? Is your head down? Or is it different? Most people, maybe I'm wrong, when you're at your best, you're confident, you're standing up tall, your shoulders might be back more, your head is up, right? Maybe you even have, God forbid, a smile on your face. Bounce in your step. I strut. I have green Jordans on. This is the first pair of Jordans I've ever had. I'm 46. I still don't feel cool enough to wear these shoes, right? But the idea is doing things that understand, like, you can interrupt that pattern when you start to feel sad, mad, any of that. When you're mad, do you grit your teeth, clench your teeth? What kind of face do you make? You know, that whole thing? If you are mad in that moment, try to smile. You cannot be mad and smile. You look psychotic if you try. But it breaks that pattern, right? So the idea is understanding these things because that's what's going to get you through. From a stress management strategy component, these are a variety of things that are research-based that show that if you're training your mind, managing your time, sleeping correctly, mindfulness. I want to hit on this real quick because of the fact so many companies have invested lots of money into well-being initiatives. We have yoga on site. We have meditation on site. We have mindfulness training. You should be fine. Let's go, right? Guess how many people use that stuff? Big goose egg, folks. Lots of money spent, little usage, but it's a check in the box, right? The challenge is, if you are busy as all get out in your job and you have a personal life and you want to try to do things that you enjoy doing outside of work and all of that, you have a fixed amount of time, why would you want to add something else in that makes you leave where you're at to go to something else? Because, oh, by the way, that resistor mindset that's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get in my car, I'm going to have to get clothes, I'm going to have to go do this, you've already lost. So the goal is finding ways to utilize applied psychology to say, let me understand how you do your job. Oh, you've got 5 minutes in between your meetings normally? Let's take that 5 minutes and figure out how you can actually reset, breathe, get back to homeostasis, and get ready to reset and focus for the next thing. Right? That is a different engagement. And by the way, let's have leadership modeling, taking time off, prioritizing physical, mental health, so that way the people that work for them see them doing that. They're like, well, they're doing it, I'm going to do it too. Right? So again, I'll share this out. So first, real-time response, a real-time tool to manage stress. That survival instinct kicks in. What happens for you when survival instinct kicks in? When you get really fearful, stressed out, do you feel tense in your body? I carry my stress in my neck and my shoulder, right? Maybe you feel it in your chest, somewhere else in your body. You get tense in your body, your heart rate starts beating very fast, right? Those are cues and signals something is going on. What happens physically is that you have an initial response, could be physically, mentally, whatever it is. Automatically, your chest constricts. That's why you get tense, because it's squeezing your heart. Your diaphragm comes up to squeeze and tense your heart to send blood to the big extremities in your body, your legs, your arms, because it's survival instinct. I gotta fight, I gotta flee, or I gotta hide. So body, feet, don't fail me now. I gotta run from stress, right? The way that we interrupt that is changing the breath. Very simple way, and I'll model first, and if you want to practice, try this out. This is first skill that you're gonna get. The idea is take a big inhale through your nose, fill up your stomach and your chest, and then a quick short breath. Because you squeeze it in and it gets the air up into your upper lungs. And then exhaling slow, a longer exhale than your inhale through your mouth. The point of this is that when you give a long exhale, and the exhale being longer than your inhale, it forces your diaphragm to lower, opening your rib cage and giving space to your heart so the blood starts rushing to your extremities, right? So in doing that, it may work just to do one. You may need 3, 5, whatever it is, but being able to do this automatically interrupts that survival instinct. So if you'd like to try this, you can sit upright in your chairs, a little dignified seat. We're gonna breathe in through the nose. And so I'll say breathe in, you'll breathe in through the nose, squeeze one more breath in, and then slowly exhale through the mouth. One more time, inhale through the nose, one more, slow exhale through the mouth. Let's do one more for fun. One more through the nose, short one, exhale, feel the shoulders come down and start to relax more. Simple, simple, simple. It may not feel like it does a lot, but I guarantee you, Stanford has already produced the research to show that this provides a major impact to stress management in the moment. Keep doing that. Sorry. So that's one. Second, progressive relaxation. So again, depending on if this is a mental, if you typically respond mentally, cognitively, through stress, there's one way to deal with that somatically through your body, responding through stress. Progressive relaxation is a great go-to. All we need to do in this moment, same type of thing. We're going to be sitting upright. If you're open to it, you don't have to close your eyes, but if you are open to it, you can close your eyes as well. All I want you to do is, when I tell you a body part, I'm going to say make a fist, and I'm going to say squeeze. What you're going to do is pull that fist up towards your forearm, towards the top of your forearm, because that's going to squeeze and cause tension in your fist and your forearm. I'm going to tell you hold or squeeze first, and then you're going to hold for 7 seconds, continuing to breathe, but then when I say off, you're just going to let go. The idea here is that for many of us, if we've worked in a job with a toxic environment or high-stress environment for a period of time, more than a year specifically, we're trained to turn off and try to compartmentalize and shut out our stress. So if you're no longer aware because you've gotten used to just ignoring the tension in your body, which most of us have, this is a way to recondition and wake you up to, oh, this is what it feels like to be tense. This is what it feels like to be relaxed, right? So we'll just try it we'll do the arm and the shoulder, all right? So a little introduction. So all you're gonna do is just breathe normally in through the nose, out through the nose. I'd like you to make a fist with your right hand or dominant hand, whichever that one is for you, sorry. So you're gonna squeeze the fist and I'm gonna say, go. And then roll that fist up so the knuckles are coming back to the top of your fist. We're gonna hold, continue to hold and squeeze, feel the muscles tense. And then off, and just let go and relax. So you should feel a difference in that right hand and forearm because you've engaged that muscle and now relaxed it. So there's a contrast there. We're gonna do that again. This time, I'm just gonna ask you to just kind of flex the whole arm, right? If you're able to do that. If you're not, please pass. I don't want anybody injuring themselves as I'm doing this. So I'm gonna say flex, go ahead and flex and squeeze that right arm or dominant arm, and we're gonna hold, just continue to breathe, continuing to breathe as you're squeezing, off, and that's it. It may seem very simple, it seems very simple to me, but the idea is that these are things that you can use in the moment when you're feeling angry, upset, whatever it is, to then reconnect back into being in the moment. That's why mindfulness practices are so important, but they're underutilized and underknown because they're not explained well to those that are doing specific work. The point of mindfulness practices are just to help you train your mind so you can be in the present moment more often. All of us get focused on worrying about things that have happened in the past, things that are possibly could happen again. We're not great mind readers. So understanding that the only focus we need to apply on is in the present moment. That's all we have control over. So mindfulness is just training our mind that wants to run all over the place, to think about all kinds of things that have no relevancy to the current moment, and just helping it bring it back to the present moment. That's all I'm going to say about that. So last things I'm going to wrap up on with this. These are the pillars of recovery. Sleeping well. Our bodies operate off of circadian rhythms, means we operate off of the sun, all that biological human evolution. Typically we were outside. I just learned a fact that blew my mind. Before, I think it was the tractor was invented, 80 to 90% of the population, the human population, was in farming before the tractor was invented. So thank John Deere for screwing everything up. Just kidding. But this idea was we were operated by the sun. Sun came up, we were outside farming, I was going to say gardening, farming and doing all that stuff. Sun went down, we went back inside to rest, recover, get back to the next day's work, because it's hard. Now we've gotten a lot of cushy lives that don't require the physical engagement that we had, but our bodies still operate off of the sun. So trying to set up our room as much as possible, not to have the the blue lights that distract us and keep us engaged, because that's the constant brain pull, right? Like, oh, blue light's on, there's something I need to check. Try to eliminate that as much as possible. Thinking well is all the skills that we're talking about here. How to train your mind to be more aware, more understanding of who you are, what you stand for, what compelling vision of the future do you have for yourself, and how do you make that happen. Moving well. We all need to move. First and foremost, as we get older, our type 2 tissue, which is what slows us down from falling or prevents us from falling, deteriorates as we get older. So we need to do, one, strength conditioning as we continue to get older. If you've ever seen the videos on Instagram, there's a 90-year-old woman and a 90-year-old guy, different videos, they're not related, but they're both strength training. Like the 90-year-old woman is doing the tractor tire tosses. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But we need to do these things so we don't end up, as we get older, if we don't do that and we don't have that type 2 tissue, we fall, break a hip, all those things, right? We can help offset that stuff. But moving can also be just walking 30 minutes every other day, as little as that, right? That's also a great stress reliever. Eating and hydrating well, that's a whole other thing. We won't go into that. So Anybody see this commercial? I think it was during the Super Bowl. This woman's in labor. It's my Arnold impression. I know it's bad. Anyway, so I mentioned the assess your stress. First and foremost, if you want to check what your stress levels are, if you're experiencing burnout, come stop by the Mental Health Hackers booth. You can also click on this link. Let me know where this information needs to be shared. So I talk all over the country. I am currently building out a research team with a university in Toronto right now to expand the research and grow this stuff so that way everybody in the community can get more educated, share this information with those that they work with, those that they're friends with, etc. We need to get the word out. We need more help. And then finally, ask me questions. I'm not going to get into the other research stuff, but what questions can I answer for you? And I'm probably up against time if I've not already ran over. 4:54. 6 minutes for questions? Or am I supposed to? Sure. They haven't paid me yet. So what questions does anybody have? We got about 5 minutes left. That's a great question. I'm not sure to answer your question, so I'll have to talk to Mr. Johnny Johnson. I don't think he goes by Johnny, but John Johnson to find out. I can also figure out maybe there's a different way. If you want to connect and fill out the survey, anybody that fills from today, I'll just send the docs out to everybody if you fill that out. That might be easier.
You mentioned running, for example, those that run and those that are like, no, not today. What about those that are like, yeah, not today, but they go anyhow? And then they decide, well, that was fine, I'm glad I went, or they started running, like, not today. Instead of 3 options, just 2.
So
Are there any studies on that sort of mental framework, or?
I'm not sure if there are or not. So what I subscribe to is this concept that we have the self-defeating, self-sabotaging component to us that's trying to prevent us from pain, but it's actually preventing us from achieving things that we want to achieve, right? So the challenge being, how do you overcome that? Because from a Stoicism or Stoic standpoint, the ancient Greek philosophy or Roman philosophy, the idea was Marcus Aurelius, those leaders would take time in the morning to have quiet time, to reflect, to meditate, and get their minds set for the day. So the idea is, I'm sure there's periods, the challenge is that resistor is so crafty and manipulative and subtle in terms of how they operate. I'm not sure if I'm getting to your answer to the question, but for me, I will be openly vulnerable on this one. I am very much, I can't just do a little bit, because it's that resistor thing. If I allow one day, like, I'll just sleep in a little bit today, or I won't do the thing today, that throws me off. There's no way I'm going to get back on track, because it's going to be a downward slope where it just throws me off. So that's why discipline is so important. So I'm not sure if I have a good answer for you on that one.
Probably an analogous idea is alpine climbing. You just don't easily go back to the ground. You have to continue on.
Totally.
And you don't have to like sit there and hem and haw and brew your tea. You have to move.
Right. Yeah. I think that would probably fit. Yeah. Any other questions? So to me, that goes into this concept of values and having a compelling vision for your life. What are you here for? Is there something that I believe that every one of us has something special to contribute to this world. Not everybody goes out of their way to try to find what that thing is, right? So are you going to spend time playing video games, or are you going to spend time volunteering and doing something that contributes to your society? I think there's to me, that comes into what's the vision for your life, and are you doing what you need to do to work towards that? I think taking time off and recharging, if you're planning that and saying, I need to have this to recharge, take that time. But if it's also like, I'm just going to slack off today because no one's really holding me accountable to anything, that's a different scenario. So one, there are a couple of things there, right? So one is we're all going to experience stuff that throws us off, right? So we have control over how we respond, but that response may not be, I just had a hip surgery, so now I'm going to start running right away. Like, that's not feasible or possible, right? So understanding what's capable, but also being adaptable. Because having an injury, going through some health issues, that type of thing, that's really easy for us to beat ourselves up and be like, well, now I'm not in the shape that I was. Now I can't do the thing that I want to do. Now I'm focused on all the negative stuff versus what do you have control over? And you don't need to go hardcore back into it, but you need to start creating the habits that get you back into it, right? So that's goal setting to me, and being able to say, like, what's going to get into my way, planning for those things, and being able to say, okay, I want to start here. I want to start walking, right? Just 30 minutes every other day, or whatever's within your grasp at that moment. And then there's a term or concept of stacking days. You're not going to go from injury to running a marathon in a super quick fashion, right? And maybe you don't want to go run a marathon. Maybe that's not of interest for you. So it's like, what are you really trying to accomplish? What's going to help you feel the way that you want to feel? And then how do you make a plan around that to say, okay, for this month, I want to work towards this goal that's achievable based upon where I'm at. And I think also having some compassion and grace for yourself is a big deal, because that resistor, I love this term, the resistor, that shadow that wants to pull you away from continuing to like grow and do things that feel good, that are delayed gratification, that resistor is going to try to continue to say that you suck, you're not good enough, it's not going to work out for you, whatever it is. So understanding that voice is there and being able to say, yeah, I hear you, I'm still going to do something to work towards this, right? So I don't think it's an easy answer, other than we really need to figure out what you are capable of right now, where you're at, meet yourself there, and then start setting some goals that allow you to grow and increase so that you can start stacking days and having some wins, which creates confidence and momentum to keep going. Yeah. All right. Any more questions? I'm going to be at the Mental Health Hackers table for a little bit. I'll stick around out here too, but thank you all so much for letting me speak and share the space with you. I greatly appreciate it. Have a great night.